Okay, we're about to dive into the story of one of the planet's most, well, surprisingly lethal animals. It's a creature you've probably seen a million times, but I promise, after this, you're never gonna look at it the same way again. So let's just start with a quick question for you. We all know the mosquito is number one, right? The undisputed all-time champion of deadly animals, thanks to malaria. But who's the runner-up? Any guesses? What animal is responsible for the second highest number of human deaths every single year? The answer is this guy, the humble freshwater snail. Yeah, I know. If you're thinking that sounds absolutely unbelievable, you are not alone. But wait till you see the numbers. They're just staggering. Get this. Every single year, snails are linked to around 200,000 human deaths. To put that in perspective, that's more than snakes, dogs, and sharks combined. So what is going on here? I mean, how on earth is this slow-moving creature so incredibly dangerous? Well, the truth is, it's not what you think at all. The snail isn't, hunting people down or anything. In fact, the snail itself is totally harmless. It's a carrier. It's the crucial middleman in a really deadly biological process. So to really get why the snail is so deadly, we've got to look at the invisible passenger it's carrying around. Okay, the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think about a disease we all know, the mosquito, right? It's just the vehicle, the taxi, for the parasite that causes malaria. Well, the freshwater snail plays the exact same role, but for a really devastating disease called schistosomiasis. So what exactly is schistosomiasis? Well, it's the world's second most devastating parasitic disease, right behind malaria. It's caused by an infection of these tiny parasitic flatworms. They are often called blood flukes, and they live in fresh water, rivers, lakes, even rice paddies. And their life cycle? Honestly, it is something straight out of a science fiction horror movie. This parasite's life cycle is it's fascinatingly complex. It has to go from water to a snail, back to the water, and then finally into a human, just to survive. All right, let's break this wild journey down. First, the parasite's eggs hatch in the water. These tiny larvae then have to find a very specific type of freshwater snail to infect. Once they're inside the snail, something incredible happens. A single larva starts reproducing asexually, basically cloning itself, and it multiplies like crazy until there are thousands of offspring. Then, these tiny fork-tailed parasites, they're called cercariae, literally burst out of the snail. And the clock is ticking. They have just 48 hours to find their final host, usually a human, by burrowing directly through their skin. No bite needed. So, once they're inside the human body, the journey continues. The parasites travel through the bloodstream to the liver, where they grow up and mature into adult worms. And then they pair up, a male and a female locked together, often for life, like a little worm couple, and they make their way to their final home, in the veins around the bladder or intestines. And here's the really crucial part. The adult worms themselves, just hanging out in your blood vessels, they aren't the real problem. The real damage, the thing that makes this disease so awful, comes from the hundreds of eggs the female produces every single day for years. Now, about half of those eggs manage to exit the body to keep the cycle going, but the other half, they get trapped. They get swept away by the bloodstream into the body's tissues and organs, and they cause this massive chronic inflammation and serious long-term damage. Okay, so now that we know how this whole nightmare works inside the body, let's zoom out. Let's look at the devastating global impact of this disease. And I have to warn you, the numbers here are really hard to wrap your head around. First off, the burden of schistosomiasis is not shared equally at all. A staggering 90% of all cases are in Africa. It primarily hits rural communities, places that don't have access to safe drinking water or proper sanitation. This forces people into daily contact with contaminated water sources for washing, for farming, for everything. Right now, it's estimated that over 230 million people are infected and need treatment. I mean, just think about that number. That is more than the entire population of a country like Brazil. And this isn't just an isolated problem. It affects people in 78 different countries across South America, the Middle East, and Asia. But maybe the most alarming number of all is this one. Nearly 800 million people, that's almost 1 in 10 people on the entire planet, live in areas where they are at risk of getting infected. The potential scale of this is just immense. And the disease itself is it's debilitating. In the beginning, you might see symptoms like abdominal pain or blood in the stool or urine, but the real severe damage comes long-term from all those trapped eggs. We're talking damage to the liver, the kidneys, the bladder. It even increases the risk of other huge health problems like bladder cancer and HIV. And for kids, who are often hit the hardest, it can cause anemia and stunted growth, which really impacts their ability to develop and even learn. So the obvious question is, why haven't we been able to stop this? Well, it turns out that fighting a parasite with a life cycle this complex is a unique and incredibly difficult challenge. Okay, so here's the absolute core of the problem. We actually have a very effective drug. It's called praziquantel, and it kills the adult worms inside the body. But, and this is a huge but, it does absolutely nothing to stop a person from getting reinfected. They could literally go back into that same contaminated water the very next day and get sick all over again. It's a treatment, it's not a vaccine. It doesn't give you immunity. So the takeaway here is that medicine alone just isn't gonna cut it. To actually eradicate this thing, you need a much bigger, integrated approach that targets the parasite's entire life cycle. That means, yes, providing medicine, but also building proper sanitation, making sure people have safe drinking water, controlling the snail populations, and of course, health education. It's a massive public health puzzle. But look, despite all these massive challenges, there is a path forward. Eradication isn't just some pipe dream, it has actually been done before. And that story, it gives us a really powerful blueprint for hope. Let's look at Japan. For centuries, this disease was just a fact of life there. But after they figured out what was causing it back in 1904, the country started a long, coordinated fight. They did everything. They controlled snail populations by lining ditches with cement. They massively improved sanitation. They even changed farming practices. Now, it wasn't quick. It took decades of relentless effort, but by 1977, they recorded their very last new case. And in 1996, the disease was officially declared eradicated in Japan. Gone. So Japan proved it. It is possible. It takes long-term investment, it takes real political will, and it takes that multi-pronged attack we talked about. But the blueprint is there. So the question that leaves us with is this: can the rest of the world rally together to finally end this devastating and honestly largely forgotten disease for good?